myself. Okay, dream so big that they think I'm crazy. Let out the beast, no, they can't tame me. Don't play with me, better mind your business. I cannot stop now, I ain't finished. I'ma keep on going till I got that. Okay, the way that I'ma do it, they can't top that. No way. Critics trying to hate, but I don't talk back, I know that. I know the kid with the bull, tell him all that. I'm the one that I'ma gamble on, I ramble on. I'm about to get my ramble on, and I'm the one they really couldn't get a handle on. Then when they see they missed the boy, they get a tantrum on. And I know they never thought we would make it. Underdogs, it wouldn't be gable. Labels gon' ask what we bring. Tell them we bringing the table. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. I don't need you, I do it myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Take off your shoes, crib brand new. Yeah, I'm about to go in like a damn fool. I'm leaving your mans, them in shambles. You know, light up the wax like a candle. Like me on fire, watch me heat up the track. I took the crown, I ain't giving it back. Unless you got L's on your wish list. Messing with me, you gon' big a statistic. Really, you think you'll get it back? That's silly. I'm about to run the game, no kidding. I'm way too cold, too chilly. Yeah, they ain't wanna hear me, yeah, now they gon' feel me. You did? Look at my team gon' weigh y'all. Now we running the game, they can't play y'all. We don't need an assist, now we counting up chips. I think it's time that they pay y'all. Let's go. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. I don't need you, I do it myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself.
I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself.
Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. I don't need you, I do it myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Okay, dream so big that they think I'm crazy. Let out the beast, no, they can't tame me. Don't play with me, better mind your business. I cannot stop now, I ain't finished. I'ma keep on going till I got that. Okay, the way that I'ma do it, they can't top that. No way. Critics trying to hate, but I don't talk back, I know that. I know the kid with the bull, tell him all that. I'm the one that I'ma gamble on, I ramble on. I'm about to get my ramble on, and I'm the one they really couldn't get a handle on. Then when they see they missed the boy, they get a tantrum on. And I know they never thought we would make it. Underdogs, it wouldn't be gable. Labels gon' ask what we bring. Tell them we bringing the table. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. I don't need you, I do it myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Take off your shoes, crib brand new. Yeah, I'm about to go in like a damn fool. I'm leaving your mans, them in shambles. You know, light up the wax like a candle. Like me on fire, watch me heat up the track. I took the crown, I ain't giving it back. Unless you got L's on your wish list. Messing with me, you gon' big a statistic. Really, you think you'll get it back? That's silly. I'm about to run the game, no kidding. I'm way too cold, too chilly. Yeah, they ain't wanna hear me, yeah, now they gon' feel me. You did? Look at my team gon' weigh y'all. Now we running the game, they can't play y'all. We don't need an assist, now we counting up chips. I think it's time that they pay y'all. Let's go. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. I don't need you, I do it myself. Yeah, I bet on myself. Yeah, I bet on myself.
Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome. Check. How we doing? How's the audio? Camera's here. Gotta remember. All right. Let's get this party started, eh? Chat. Okay. Welcome to another live. I had a little bit of a break while I did recovered from Daytona 500, and then also I was in St. Pete last weekend for the IndyCar race. Quite a good time. I don't usually cover IndyCar, and so it's good to try something a little bit new, not new to me, but I haven't covered it in the last couple years. So super excited to go see that. I love St. Pete. It's a fantastic race to go, especially if you have credentials and you can shoot trackside. I love street races. I love being close to the action. So it's a track that suits me quite well. So if you're joining us on the live, thank you very much. Happy to have you. Most of the views we get on these come after the fact. So if you're watching this after the fact, appreciate you. We do this every now and then, testing out some different times. Last time I did the evening, and my fellas in the UK were complaining that it was too late. So I think we'll try this slot here. We'll just see how it goes. So you tell me. It's don't want to do this if it doesn't have benefit to everybody else. So yeah, let me know what works and we'll go from there. But today we're going to talk about color a little bit. Color is the one thing that no matter how many videos I make on it, seem to get talked about quite a lot. And in this one, we're going to cover a little bit different stuff. So we're going to cover sort of how I treat color throughout a project. So we'll start with a normal clip, a daytime clip, really well lit. And then we'll sort of see how that grade looks in different conditions. Cloudy conditions, we'll look at some sunset and then like pre-sunset stuff. We'll look at some backlit stuff and we'll see how the grade is affected as we go throughout that process. So I've got a series of clips in here loaded in from last weekend that we'll work through and see what we've got. So Leroy, we are going to get into most of that. I can do export settings at the end, and then we'll talk about LUTs and where to apply those in DaVinci because there is a very specific process. I should say, if you're in DaVinci, this is going to be great for you. If you're in Premiere, it's fine as well. Most of these principles are not specific to DaVinci. I don't think anything but one node is specific to DaVinci, and even then it's not a big driving factor. So thank you all for coming. We're going to get into this in just a second. What's up, Fred? My man Fred. One of these clips in here is a Fred shout out. He gave me an angle and it was amazing, which is pretty much just what Fred does. So if you don't follow Fred, he's in the chat here, Fred Hardy Photo. Make sure you follow him. He's the GOAT. He's the man. All right, let's get into, I've got some background music that's supposed to be playing this time since we're not really listening to any sound effects. So I'm going to rely on you guys to tell me if this is too loud or not. So let's just get into looking at what we're going to be doing today. All right. Now, you'll have to let me know where we're at here in terms of camera and audio and all of those things. Yeah, so this is a clip of Alex Pillow. This is where we're going to start. This is a well-lit clip. The sun is coming a little bit split. It's probably my favorite celebration shot I've ever gotten, to be honest. Camera's not perfectly level. It was quite crowded. What you can't see is that it was quite crowded, which is fine. But we're gonna show how to go from. So this clip was shot in log. So this is what it looks like straight out of camera. This is what it looks like converted to Rec 709, and then we're gonna walk through the process from scratch on how to turn it into. This is the clip that I delivered to the client. So we're going to show the process on how we get from this, which is just base converted Rec 709, into a fully graded clip. Now, something you should know about my style of grading, there's a lot of different theories on color. A lot of different people like a lot of different things. And there's people that like bleach bypass. There's people that like extremely natural looking, like Ari Alexa type stuff. I'm a very punchy color person. I am of the view that these people spend all this money on livering these race cars in bright colors, and I am of the view that I am trying to assist in that almost. So you'll see a lot of my colors are extremely punchy. We toe the line on saturation probably for what a lot of people would consider cinematic, but ultimately I don't really care about all that. I just want to make cool stuff, and if it looks good to me, it's my style. It's extremely noticeable. I think at this point I have like a very like sort of well-established style when it comes to color, and I've just been refining and I haven't really changed it much. So we're going to show how to go through those two things. If you have questions along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat and I will try to monitor that relatively often. But we are going to start with this one of Alex. We can do a quick chat check quick. Hello everybody. Yes, Alex. Magnus, thanks for coming, dudes. Corsa, nice to see you, bud. Oh, Chris is in here. I feel instant pressure. Speaking of the shot of Alex, Chris, here's what it looks like. Probably my best, of course, shot in 120. Thankfully, the Sony's autofocus stayed pretty good on Alex, despite the fact there was confetti flying. Oh God, we're getting ahead. All right, so we'll go back to the original clip and we'll get started. All right, audio's kind of quiet. I'm assuming you mean my voice. We're gonna turn that up just a little bit. All right, mic check, 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 check. Turn the music down maybe a little bit. All right, I'm gonna rely on you guys to sort of tell me from here. I'll turn it up just a little bit more. Check, check, check. I would have to turn it up from the camera from here, but you're a little silent. Okay, hold on one second. We're gonna turn this up on the camera. Whoa, this is attractive, I'm sure. Check, check. Peeking a little bit. Check, check. Check, 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 check. All right. I'm going to rely on you guys. Audio's a little left bias. Yeah. It's hard to get completely right in this FX3. I'll turn the left channel down just a little bit. Check, 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 check. Should be even now. All right. We're going to roll with this. Yeah, okay, sorry. I'm new to live streaming. I should say, the intentions of live stream, you know, when you're doing YouTube videos, you're very sort of beholden to the algorithm type stuff, like get it quick, get it out, sort of get to your point quick, move on really quickly. And with a live stream, I can say whatever I want and take as long as I want, assuming that anybody that is watching it is interested in what I'm actually saying. Instead of, you know, this is not something that I'm focused on trying to get out fast or trying to get through something fast because, you know, this isn't an algorithm thing. This is basically just for you guys and anybody else that wants to watch it. So I have a little bit more time to explain stuff. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them. But until then, I'm going to sort of break down my node structure. If you're a Premiere user, take this sort of just as an understanding of the steps. If I'm going to, when I say the word node, just think of that as like a step in the process for you, because that's ultimately what nodes are. They're just different sort of linear steps on how you get to color. And, you know, the same thing can apply in Premiere or Final Cut. It's mostly just part of the process. So that's how you should think of it. But the node you see that says CST is my conversion, my DaVinci conversion to Rec 709. I tend to have a couple different nodes. So temp is always my first node. We'll make another. We'll call that detail. We'll make another. We'll call that exposure. All right, and then we'll have a couple color nodes. The first we'll just call color. Second we'll call LUT. We'll have a power window. I'll explain what that is in just a minute. And then after the CST, we will have a sharpening node. So those are the steps. Those are my basic steps. Now it changes with things like interviews and things like that, but every single time I'm grading specifically car clips, this is what my node structure looks like. You know, you can do, if I'm doing multiple power windows, I'll have parallel nodes and stuff like that, but we'll get into that sort of as the process goes. So the first thing to me, when I'm looking at this image, the first thing I'm going to do, because I know the route sort of in which I work, I'm going to start with my exposure before I do anything else. So this is a bit overexposed in camera. Again, I was down. It was very crowded. Didn't have a lot of space. Didn't have a lot of room. So I wasn't able to check the camera. This is just with an A7S III with a Sigma 16-28. And I'm using the back of the LCD screen. Doesn't even have a monitor on it. So I don't have a lot of space to really like look. Because I'm shooting in log, I know as long as I get close, we're going to be fine in the end. So we're just going to have a look at the exposure. The first thing I always do, pump a little bit of contrast with the slider. I go 1.1 almost always. And again, part of this is just knowing my camera, right? Like maybe this doesn't look quite the same on like a Blackmagic or a Canon camera. I'm using a Sony, but this is just like, I know my steps. And so like, understand that it may vary a little bit for you. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I've added some contrast. I'm going to bring my gamma down, which is bringing sort of the lower points. I'm adding a little bit of contrast with the wheels now. Something I'm looking at in an image like this is like his suit, you know, I'm side lit. So one side of the suit is going to be very shadowy. The other side is going to be very bright. And so I'm basically right now just trying to balance the subject. All this color, all this sky, clouds, all of that stuff is not unimportant, but isn't the main focus. And we can move that around in our color tab a little bit. So right now, the first thing I'm focusing on is basically just looking and making sure that I'm not too bright on his suit and I'm not too dark on the shadow side of his suit. If you think about it, this is like a perfect scenario where I'm shooting a bit shadow side. There's a little bit of dynamic in the light going across him. You know, Sean and those guys sort of told me where they thought I should stand. I was new to the IndyCar winner circle, so this is one of those things where like it just worked out. I don't know that it was talent or anything like that, but anyway, back to the grading. We're gonna bring highlights down. The reason, so there's a lot of different sliders in DaVinci. Lift is adjusting basically the darkest parts of your image. Gamma, just assume that's adjusting the lowest half of your image. Gain is adjusting the highest half of your image. Offset is basically moving the pivot point of those wheels around. And then you have a highlights and shadow tab. I use the highlights slider in DaVinci a lot because recently I've learned a little bit why, but like what I find in the highlight slider is it's a bit scientific in DaVinci in that as you're moving the slider up and down, it is adding sharpening where it at a level that it thinks it's degrading your image because you've moved the slider and the exposure around a little bit more or less than it should. So it's not just simply moving the highlights around, it's moving the detail and the sharpening around as well. So I use the highlight slider quite a lot. I know it feels like it is the same as the gain and the gamma, but they're all adjusting different percentages of the image. So when I'm looking at this, where we're at here, I'm looking at his suit, and that's still a bit hot to me. So I'm gonna adjust this highlights down until that suit, only looking at the suit here, is in a good range for me, where I feel like I've got, you know, almost like it looks almost like it has slightly more dynamic range, just because the difference between the brightest and the darkest part of the suit is a little bit flatter. And so when I'm happy with that, I'm at negative 28 or so here. When I'm happy with that, I'm gonna move on from my subject, and now I'm looking at the sky. So I need more contrast in the colors and the clouds in the sky. So then I'll go back to my gain wheels. I'll push those up a little bit. If you listen to colorists talk, they talk a lot about pushing and pulling different parts of the image. And so that's basically what you're doing. I'm going to one tool, going to another tool to fix, and it's this constant like tug. If you think about, you know, my image has a bunch of different branches coming off of it. And every time I pull the lift, it pulls everything else just a little bit with it. And every time I pull the highlights, it pulls it back this way. And so it's this constant like dance almost that you're doing, trying to get everything you want out of the image. All right, for me, I almost always with my Sony stuff push these curves a little higher on the offset, not much. So looking at this now, I need to add a little bit more contrast in his suit. We're okay on the bright side, maybe a little bright, but I want this crowd to go down for sure so that I can have more focus on the subject. I'm gonna lower the lift just a little bit. Oh, wrong way. Lower that down just a little bit. I'm looking at the clouds. I definitely want the clouds to be proper white. I don't want them to be gray. So we're gonna take some of this highlight out just a little bit. And I think this is a pretty good starting point. We'll touch on the exposure again. I go throughout these nodes all the time. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go into my detail node. I just know that I always run, this is the one feature that DaVinci has that I don't think there is a equivalent in Premiere. Is you can add something called mid detail. It's a very similar to, if you were in Lightroom, it's very similar to like the texture slider. So just to get absolutely crazy with it, like you can tell as I slide it around, it either makes the image very soft or it makes it very sort of contrast textury. We don't do a lot. You'll see a theme in a lot of my coloring is to do just a little bit. I don't do like a lot of anything. I do just a little bit of everything. So I just know that I'm always at a base. If I'm not really tight on faces, I'm almost always at a base 20, and I just leave it at that. Next from there, working backwards again, I'm in the temperature tab. I'm gonna get rid of that quick. I'm in the temperature tab. So not a lot here that you can really tell. This is temped quite well. I'm not overly polarized. I'm not overly, you know, there's nothing that's like telling me, there's not a bunch of white walls that are telling me that it's super off balance. I can tell a little bit, like when I'm in this case, like I'm basically looking for anything that's white that can give me some gauge on where I'm at with temp. Now, I like my colors to be very warm, right? We're in St. Petersburg for this race. It was like 80 something degrees. We're in South Florida. Like I want it to feel warm. I want my colors to feel warm. A lot of that is going to be in these color tabs. But I do want to warm this thing up just a little bit, even with the slider. So I'm going to warm it up just a tick. I'm basically looking at the clouds here. So I want these clouds to remain white. I don't want to kill them and make them orange. So I'm basically moving slider around, trying to find a space where I can put some warmth in the image, but I'm not destroying my whites. So for me, that's probably right around 80, 90, where I feel just a little before and after. You can see it's starting to move the blues a little bit towards aqua. It's moving his yellow around, moving the red around. We'll deal with that in a minute, but not a whole lot going on there. We are going to shove this. It does look maybe a tick magenta. So we're going to shove green just a little bit. Ultimately, like I said, I don't have a lot of reference point for white balance in the image. So I'm just looking at the clouds here. I definitely want them to remain neutral or just like a tick on the warm side, but I don't want them to be overly, you know, warm. I don't want to push warmth in that way. I'm going to do that actually on the color side. So moving into the color, I'm going to move the colors around so that I get that warm feel, but I haven't wrecked the image by just sliding the temperature. And it's not so bad on this image, but what you'll find when you're dealing with like track footage, and we'll get to this in a minute, what you find when you deal with track footage, if you try to shove that temp slider to get the warmth you want out of it, it totally destroys the racetrack and you lose the neutral color on the racetrack. So it makes the racetrack very orange, and that's not something that I tend to like. So, but I want the colors all to shift that way. So first thing I'm going to do, I have two nodes for color. I have color, which is where I'm going to get into the HSLs. And then I have the LUT, which is where I put my LUT. Now, this isn't, I'm not trying to add, I'm just showing you what I do. These two nodes will end up being what is version 2 of the LUT that I have. Haven't quite like gotten to that point yet, but I'm working on it. So we're going to add the LUT to my LUT node, Greg's Motorsports pack, Rec 709, daytime. Now, almost always straight away down to 0.5 for me. And just to give you a sense of what that does, a little bit more contrast, and then it shoves a little bit of blue. You don't see it as much here. There's not a lot of shadow here, so you can't see it. Shows a little bit of blue, does a tiny amount of orange teal, does a lot of pushing on blues and a lot of pushing on yellows. Now, that's good when I'm shooting race cars all the time. Not quite as good when I'm shooting faces. So we're going to jump into the color tab and start making some of our adjustments. So first thing for me, always, go into the HSL sliders. Again, this is any program is going to have this. I'm in the HSL sliders. First thing I'm looking at is my hue versus hue. Now you can see lots of blue in this image. I shoot a lot of race cars. A lot of my client cars are blue as well. I love pushing these towards the aqua. Again, it makes it feel like very warm to me. So like it's not big changes. So if you look at the sky here, I'm pushing up a little bit. I don't want to make it like crazy, obviously, right? I don't want you to like actually notice. I just want you to feel like the image is very like warm, if that makes sense. So not a massive change, as you can see, but enough, just turn it off and on, enough that like these blues now feel very warm. So that's what I was trying to say with the temp slider. So I could have shoved, if I turn this off, I could shove this temp slider until I get those blues, you know, I'm very warm there. And now I've shoved the green down and now I've got that color blue I want, but the image is like absolutely destroyed. So we don't do that. We do that in the color instead. So now if I turn the color that we just did on, I get that tone of blue, but I haven't wrecked any of my other colors yet, if that makes sense. I'm actually going to turn the LUT down a little bit as well. This is a very bright suit that he has on. All right, back in the HSLs. In this case, I want a little bit more contrast in my sky. So I'm going to bring my blues down so that I've got a little more contrast against the clouds. So you can see here when I'm moving the slider down, I'm getting like proper contrast in those clouds. Now, as I'm doing that, it's pumping saturation. Anytime you're lowering the luminance or like shoving the gamma down or the lift down, you're saturating those parts of the image a little bit. So we'll address that in a minute, but basically I don't want to, again, I don't want so much that this is like distracting to me. I just want a little bit more contrast in the sky between the clouds. Oops. Okay. We're going to go with that. Like I was saying, my LUT is not great on skin. So it's great on cars, not as great on skin the way it sits. So for me, I'll go into my hue versus sat. I got my little eyedropper. I'll click his face, click the shadow part of his face as well. That highlights me the section that the facial tones are in. And I'll just basically lower the saturation on those tones. We've got a hand right here as well. I'll select the hand, make this a little bit wider, and shove that saturation down a little bit as well. Now, I get off a lot because I'm working with blue cars a lot, but when I'm working with like the Ferrari team and all of that, you have to be very careful when you're doing this with skin tones, because you're also grabbing a pretty the sort of magenta all the way to yellow is a very tight knit group, and the facial tones are using a lot of different layers of color. They're using a little bit of blue, they're using a little bit or a little bit of magenta, a little bit of red, a little bit of orange, a little bit of yellow. It changes all the time, right? Like this guy's hand is in a different tone. Like if I click his face, you can see this guy here is selected. If I click this guy's hand, the little bit to the left, closer to the red magenta, is selected. So you have to be careful, especially when there are cars in the frame. It's not a big deal here. I'm just looking at his suit, basically, making sure I'm not like desaturating this too much. It doesn't bother me in this case. I think the Sonys tend to have very saturated reds in the first place, so it doesn't really bother me, but nonetheless, that's something you want to sort of just be on the lookout for. And so I'm looking at this, and I think this is what I'm going to go with. I'm not, maybe a little bright on the suit, which I don't love, but if the subject is the brightest part, then I think that's okay. If it was the racetrack or something I didn't want to hold people's attention, I would change it around a little bit to make the subject the brightest part. So I don't love like exactly how bright it is, but because it's a subject, I'm not that concerned about it. So I'm going to move on into my power windows. Now, I almost in every clip I grade do some sort of power window. Sometimes it'll be gradient power windows, and what those are is basically masks, what you would call masks in DaVinci. So to give an idea of what I would do here, I draw a little mask around Alex, fade it quite a lot. Let's bring this in a little bit. I'm going to invert it. And then now I'm going to do little adjustments to my gamma wheel to bring down some of the exposure around him. Again, like I was just saying, I want this to be the bright part of my image. So that's my focal point, is Alex. So I'll bring some of that down. You know, sometimes I'll desaturate it just a tick. Because again, as I bring that gamma down, it does start to saturate a little bit. And in this case, I'm going to add some lens blur as well. I think if you were in Premiere, you could just add, like de-sharpen basically. Now, this is obviously way too much. Again, most of my effects, I barely want you to even, I think if you don't notice it's there, it's a good thing. So I'm like trying to get right up to the limit of you actually being able to see. So not a whole lot, just to give an idea of what this power window does. We'll turn it off and on, off and on. And you can see it just pulls focus where I want it. That's basically all I'm doing with that node, is trying to pull focus where I want it. So that's what you've done with the lens blur. That's what we've done with bringing the gamma down and the other parts of the image. And then the last thing I do always is jump into my sharpening. I use blur sharpen, and I know on my Sony, because I have the sharpening turned all the way off, I know that this guy I always slide down to 0.46. It's rare that I move off of that. I know that the digital sharpening in the Sony cameras is horrid, and so I turn that all the way off in camera, and I add it back here, and I just know that this is the range that I tend to like. So that's my color grade. Let's just look compared to the one I did for the client, just to see like how far off we are. Quite a bit on the blues. I actually like this one better. I spent way more time on this one. When I was on location editing, they had won the race, so we have to pump it out like immediately. I think this one looks better than the one that I sent them. The reds are super bright, poppy here. Skins are a little oversaturated. This one is a lot more. The colors I want to pop are the ones popping. So that gives you an idea of how I color grade, like daytime, well lit, no sort of adversity to overcome in the clip. That's how I color grade that stuff. So what do we think? Haven't seen that chat move in a while. Is everyone just paying attention? That was a lot of talking. Is my chat broken? I don't think so. Because they're always so chatty, and then now there's nothing. It makes me think something's wrong. Well, whatever the case. Logged in. Okay. Good to know. Yeah, Jesus. You guys are freaking locked, eh? Holy smokes, okay. Never used the HSL graph more. Amazing how much it can help changing little bits. Dude, seriously, I feel like when people are just starting, they feel like they need to do a lot with color to sort of to be able to say that they color graded it. They feel like they have to make big changes. And I feel like when you have that mindset, you're not making changes like with intention. And you'll see, I talk a lot in my videos about doing things with intention, right? I mean, I set this shot up with intention. I was there early. I had to fight people off because I knew the crew was going to be to my left. And I knew that Alex was going to end up facing, after I don't have the clip long enough, but he ends up facing to the left. You see all these photographers on the bottom sort of right of the frame, they're going to see Alex's back. He's tilted towards me, right? And so you set your shots up with intention. You should color grade with intention as well. You shouldn't just let stuff get away from you and throw stuff around or just add LUTs or any of that stuff. This is a tasteful way. You see that I'm using my own LUTs, of course, but it's not a massive driver of the image, and it's not anything that like breaks the image. I think a lot of LUTs that are out there today, again, to make you feel like you're getting value for buying something, shove everything in such crazy proportions that it ends up like breaking the image. Like you can see this is LUT off, this is LUT on at 0.5. It's not massive. Like it's pretty small changes. And what will be LUT version 2 is probably a bigger change. So this is just a basic image, all the corrections with no color changes. This is it with the color changes. Again, like be intentional about the stuff that you're doing. I'm in South Florida. I want this thing to feel warm. So I shove colors towards their warmer directions. I shove blue towards green because that's the way blue looks when it's warm. So you don't want to wreck the skin tones. You don't want to wreck the yellows because that's, you know, sponsor color and that's very specific. But anyway, that's just, if there's one thing I could teach people, it's to be intentional with your work. So you were in the zone. Yeah, I rambled for quite a while. My voice is feeling it. Sorry to anyone using Premiere. Yeah, I don't want to be like that guy. I like DaVinci. I have no reason to go back. On a recent video, people were mentioning that you can change windows around in Premiere, and that is true. That is nice. But changing windows around doesn't do anything on the client side, and I feel like this app gives you tools that help produce work for the client, for me. So for me, while that convenience would be nice, the client's never going to notice that. And so for me, it's fine to just have the stock DaVinci windows. Do I wish I could edit it? Yes, but it's not a big deal. All right, we're going to move on. So I'm going to treat this like I would if I was actually grading a project. So typically once I've found a base point here for, you know, this level of sunlight that day or the location and my camera settings and all those things, I tend to just copy that grade and work. I don't go base level every single time. So like if I was coming to this shot, again, this is converted. So we'll delete that. This is my log. And so I'll start from that same point I just graded Alex. This is kind of the same way. I'm not shooting shadow side in this one. This is just something I saw. Guy looking at the track, you'll be able to see in a second, but you'll see the cars in his sunglasses. And so I will basically just apply that grade. And then I'll go from there. So I'm not starting over all the time. So using this one, this blue is not the sky. So it may seem egregiously aqua. This is a sponsor banner, a Velo, I think, sponsor banner. And so that's not the sky. In this case, if I was think people would get confused, I might turn that a little more towards blue and less towards green, just so people don't think I'm totally crazy pushing the image. But nonetheless, we're going to jump off. I'll do comments quick, and then I'll show you how I would handle making these small adjustments. Makes you think about switching to DaVinci. It's a good one. I like it. Color, I mean, we're sort of in its main flex, right? People say color is the reason people switch to DaVinci, so we're sort of making an example out of its main flex here. But I'm a fan. I switched 5 years ago and haven't looked back. Miss shooting motorsports. Shooting motorsports is good stuff. Highly recommend. It's in Premiere for 10 years. Went to Resolve. Never looked back. Yep, same. I've been switched. Caleb says been switching over. Yeah. It's a different workflow. In Premiere, you have everything in the same window, and DaVinci changes it, right? Like you have, your media pool where you bring media in. You have your time edit tab where you do time. You have Fusion. Oh, no, I'm going to bog my computer down, which is basically DaVinci's version of After Effects. Not as good as After Effects, but it's okay. You have your color tab. You have your Fairlight tab, which is how you handle audio. And so I need that separation because it helps me stay disciplined on coloring everything at the end instead of coloring as I go. But anyway. All right, we're going to get into the clip now. So this is just copied from our Alex clip. Not bad. We're going to deal same sort of format. We're going to start with exposure. I'm actually going to turn the power window off for now because I don't think I would use it on something like this. I think at least not in the same way we use it for Alex. I may try to highlight the glasses. So basically this clip is cars you can see in his right eye, and the glasses, it has cars whizzing by. Specifically this one, all three McLarens went by, and the McLaren really popped in the glasses. So we're going to treat this as if I was coloring it from like if my client was McLaren. So looking at it, it's pretty good, the base, right? I don't have a ton of room to go. It's a bit shadowy for me. I don't have a ton of room to push up because you can see on his shirt we're already pretty close to clipping here. You'll notice I don't use graphs as well. It's just not my thing. I've tried balancing stuff on graphs, and if it passes the eye test, it's good enough for me. So just looking at it, I want to bring some of this detail back. I don't want to lose anything on his shirt, so I'm going to run these highlights down just a little bit. And then to counteract that, especially in the face here, I'm going to get rid of some of this gamma. I'm going to bring this gamma up a little bit. I'm watching those highlights on his shirt still. Bring the gain down just a little bit. Here's sort of exposure out of camera, very bright. Exposure after we've made some changes. Again, this has nothing to do with color, but you can see as you bring the image down, it does push some saturation into the image. So that's something you need to think about. I think a lot of new filmmakers, so when people send me their stuff to evaluate, the color is always at the top end of, if we were looking at a graph, shoved to the top end. Don't be afraid to crush blacks. Like that's my thing, is like I am okay with not going all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom on the graph, and letting everything live more on the bottom half. That's how they do it in Hollywood, and that's like a look that I really like. So that's why you see that this is how a lot of people would deliver the image, very not contrasty, very high up on the graph. I like delivering everything with punchy color, so I shove it way down. Now, this is an older guy. If this was a young person or something I was doing an interview on, I would turn this mid detail off. You can kind of see, just if I zoom in, the mid detail on and off adds a lot of that texture in his face. And Sony, I'm using a mirrorless camera here, and it's already a bit digital looking. So you can have a tendency, definitely with interviews, but in shots like this as well, it can have a tendency to make the skin look very digital. Whereas like a red, when I work with Chris and he shares some of his red footage with me, his skin is very natural looking. It doesn't look digital at all. So I can add mid detail to the skin and make it look natural. In this case, I tend to take it off. I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't do that in this one. This guy's very aged, we'll say. He's very wrinkly. The details in his face I actually kind of like. But again, this just goes back to the idea of being intentional with your shots, thinking about each one of these nodes and like getting what I want out of each section. So exposure, I think I've got what I want out of that. Mid detail, I'm going to leave it because I kind of like how aged it makes everything look. Now I'm going to go into temperature. I want a warm. We have a much better basis point with the whites here. So it's maybe a little warm for me. So I'm going to go just a little bit down, and I'm going to go a little bit pink. This is mostly an experience thing. I'm just looking at these whites. I want the whites to look fairly neutral, maybe just a tick warm, right? Because I'm trying to generate a fairly warm image out of this deal. I don't want to push warmth with the slider and lose the balance that you have in the whites, right? Like now it's a very warm looking image, but my neutrals, my blacks and my whites have too much yellow and orange pumped into them. So I like to do it with color instead of with the warmth slider. So I would say that's fairly balanced. Ultimately, this is actually probably pretty good. And if I'm in a hurry to deliver something, this is like probably how I would ship it. If I was doing like an after movie or something, I would probably add a little more sauce into these glasses. So I would get my power window node. I'll come in, grab this little draw tool thing. I'm going to draw a little thing around his glasses here. Not going to spend a lot of time masking this out, but since it is sort of the focus of the image, I do think it needs to have a little bit of juice on it. We're going to soften it up just a little bit. Inside, outside, soften it. And then now I'm going to add some contrast. I find that adding contrast in these definitely helps make it look a little more like they're depolarized. I'm going to shove my gain up just a little bit and get some of that exposure back. Just see what it looks like off and on. So basically what I want in this is the same thing I was doing with Alex where he was my subject and I wanted him to pop. In this case, the guy is the subject, but really what I want people to see is the sunglasses, right? Like if you don't see that, it was kind of all worthless, I guess you would say. So here, just in those little adjustments, here's before and after just on his eye. Definitely stands out more. We could do a little bit more. I'm going to come back in, and if my client was Arrow McLaren, we're going to treat it like that. I'm going to go into my HSL. I'm going to grab the car. I'm going to go to the saturation tab, grab the car. We're going to bump him up just a little bit so that orange pops. We're going to go to the luminance. I'm actually going to shove it down just a little bit there. And so here's another before and after. I could maybe even warm it up just a little bit, really. Not too much. Okay. I'm not going to do it with the other lens. It's brighter anyway because of the way how close it is to the banner. So if anything, this is sort of making the lenses look a little bit more balanced. Actually, it's a bit magenta. Let's see here. It's a bit magenta. We'll shove a little bit of green in it. I'm trying to watch these whites on this wall. Can't get too crazy. What does detail look like? Too much. Breaks it up a little bit. We'll add just a little bit of detail. I'm going to go back. Here is before. Here is after. Super subtle. If I really wanted to make more focus on that, I could do another power window like we did with Alex and lower the saturation, put some blur on all this over here. Actually, I'll do it and just so I can show you what it would look like. This is probably not So I tend to do all my masking on what are called parallel nodes. If you're in Premiere, don't worry about that. That's not really relevant to anything but DaVinci because of the way it's very linear. It goes one node to the next. So I'm going to get another circle. I'm going to put it sort of around his face. I don't really want to be changing exposure across his face. Bring it out. We'll invert it again. Same deal. I'm going to bring the gamma down. Oh, autosave. Bring the gamma down. And then I'm going to go into effects, add that lens blur again. And just bring that down to the same range, like that 0.18 range. Okay. Now, off. Oh, not the LUT. So there's our power windows off. Just is just our basic grade. Sorry, I keep messing up. All right. Basic grade. Here's with our adjustments. Now, you may ask yourself, how do you know, he moves around a little bit. You can go into the tracker window. So go to my power, my one around the glasses, go to the tracker window, and you can front and back track. It's one of the good things DaVinci does. It doesn't always do like super great. You can see here, like it would need a little bit of work in this frame tab. So you can go over to the frame node and you can just keyframe it. I'm not really that concerned. I'm basically just showing you how to grade, so I'm not like overly concerned with it in this particular instance, but I'm going to give just one little breakdown on the entire process here. Okay, log image, converted into Rec 709. Our exposure adjustment's done. Our temperature adjustment's done. Putting detail in the image. This is our color grading, off, on, off, on, and then our power windows. And that's our full image. That's how I would ship it. I like the orange in the sight line. That it helps if your car is bright. Obviously, there's some darker cars like here that would be much harder to make anything out of. I would need to be much tighter on the eyeglasses, but that's where I'm at. Another one down. What do we think? I struggle most getting my colors and exposure consistent through my clips. It's tough. You should be using at the very least a multimeter when you're in camera. But if you really want to get better at it, you should be using an RGB parade. So on my monitor, on my camera, on my track camera, I'm using a monitor. And I know that for Sony's log footage, I know that I want to be in a 40 to 60 IRE, like the bulk of the image. Obviously, graphs are all over the place, but the bulk of the image, you can see always a part of the image that has the most information. I want that to live in between 40 and 60 IRE. And if I don't have access to that for some reason, I'll use the multimeter. I know I want to be about a stop, 1 1/3 stops overexposed for S-Log3. And that's mostly just knowing your camera. That will change on different cameras, but knowing those two things and trying to get every clip close to that so that when I come into the color grading process, I can just copy my color grade and make slight adjustments. If you're super overexposed on one and super underexposed on the other, it becomes very hard to do, all of it at once. So anyway, I'm going to take a drink of water and we're going to get into, what do you think? We'll do sunset next, maybe? All right. I've got some other ones, but I'm not too afraid to admit that I usually walk my dog around 4:30. So I don't want to miss. She is sleeping, I guess, but we'll do a couple more. Here is one of my favorite shots from the weekend. It is a sunset shot during pole. Actually, this is Scotty Mack. He ends up getting pole. You can't really see it here, but as he went by, he was hard on the brakes and brake dust shot out, and I was backlit. Sort of backlit dust or smoke always slaps. So same deal. I'm going to delete these. I'm going to copy the grade over from our original clip, and we'll see where we're at and what we need to adjust. Okay, this is actually sort of a good starting point for how sunset stuff usually looks. So I'm going to get rid of the power window quick. We'll deal with that in a minute. So this is going to probably be the bigger transformation from sort of the basic grade over to what our finished product's going to be. You'll see this. My version 2 of the LUTs will have a sunset grade, but this is basically what happened. So for this one, I'm actually going to start on the temperature because this is the biggest issue when I'm shooting sunset. So you can see it's all very orange. I don't need to pump a bunch of warmth into it, but always when I'm shooting sunset, and this may be a Sony thing, I don't know. Always when I'm shooting sunset, I have to shove a bunch of magenta in it. This is not a color orange that I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of very like natural orange sunset stuff. This may be the way it looked like on site, but I like my oranges to be like extremely true. So I'm going to shove a bunch more magenta in here. I'm going to warm this up just a little bit to sort of emphasize all of this. And I'm not going to go too crazy. We'll come back to this, I'm sure, because as we bring our exposure down, it will change all of this just a little bit. Can't see my pup, can you? She's sleeping right here. As long as she's sleeping, I can keep color grading. She'll be all right. Anyway, so we'll get the temperature in a base range. Again, just to give an idea, you know, it's very green, straight out of camera. I like my stuff poppy with orange, but also extremely true orange. So this is a more magenta based orange. Now we're going to run into our exposure node. I'm shooting through a fence very badly here. And so anytime I'm shooting through a fence, I have to pump contrast into the image. So I'll pump another 1/10 of contrast in. I'll go to 1.2. And so it adds, basically I'm looking at my tires here and the blacks. I'm extremely backlit, so that should be proper black, right? Some of this other stuff that we've graded, I'm not really trying to make everything true black. I'm just trying to balance the image. This one, I need these to be true black. If it's not, because I'm shooting backlit, if it's not true black, it ends up looking fairly washed, the shadows. So I'm gonna go into my lift here. I'm gonna shove my lift down quite a bit. Now I feel like I've got true black on the tires. I'm going to shove some of the gain in it, back in it, try to get some contrast. Again, what you're seeing here is smoke from the brakes being backlit, and that's what this hazy... The sun was actually a little bit higher in the sky. I wasn't actually flaring it in this shot. I needed qualifying to be a little bit later, but it looks that way because of all the smoke. So there we are there. I'm just going to turn off and on. All we've changed here is exposure and temperature. So this is how we started. This is out of camera. This is not log. This is just because I'm shooting through a fence. I don't want to shoot through a fence, but I want this shot and I don't have a choice. There's not a window. So adding contrast, bringing those blacks back down, and then temping it correctly. You almost can't tell anymore that I'm shooting through a fence. So a key point would be that if you have to shoot through a fence, which you have to do on street circuits a lot, you have to pump a little bit more contrast into your image. And so if I was going quick, this is actually pretty good, right? I'm being very careful in camera not to overexpose the parts of the track. I want to keep detail in the track. So I've done that. I'm going to just see what it looks like, bringing these highlights down a little bit more to try to get this information back on the track. But you could easily overexpose it in camera and be like more at this point, and you've lost this information on the racetrack. I tend to try not to do that. I don't mind my sunset stuff looking like almost dark, right? I think the accent for sunset stuff is like not necessarily on the car. It's like all of the surroundings. Like look at the contrast between this car and the bright spot on the racetrack. And that's all about like how you position yourself, but it also has a lot to do with how you expose it. So like straight out of camera, like I still am getting that, but if I really like overexpose this, you would lose all the detail on the racetrack. So this is pretty good. I'm going to add another node, go back to our power window and show you what I would do here. So I've got this section on the wall. I like the racetrack being where it is. I've got this section on the wall I could bring down maybe. I'm actually going to do two power windows. So I'm going to do a gradient this time. I'm going to align it similar to the wall. Bring it up just a little bit. come over here. I'm going to shove that gamma back down. I'm actually going to warm it a little bit as well. I kind of like the bokeh here. It's a white wall, but it's very orange. It's on brand, you know, for a sunset. Shove that stuff around just a little bit, give you an idea. Before, after. I don't, you know, I didn't ask to have a big fence in my way, but it's kind of nice. If I was really thinking, a little pro tip that only the people in the live will get. When I really go out to shoot sunset stuff, I will often bring a bottle of water or a spray bottle in some cases. And when I have to shoot through fences like this, I will try to use it to my advantage. And I will spray the fence on this bottom part and try to get it pretty wet so that when I'm bokehing through it, it ends up glistening quite a lot. So you get a lot more like round spots on the fence, and it can make it a lot more interesting. I do that a lot at Indy as well. But when you're shooting diagonal through the fence like this and not just straight on, you can get a lot of cool like little spots. So little tip that I didn't do it here because I honestly didn't expect the sun to be in such a good spot. Again, my first time doing IndyCar here, so not something I usually deal with, but that's just a little pro tip. I'm gonna look at the second power window here, do another gradient, shove that guy up, bring it down from the top. It's just a little bright. Like this IndyCar rig is a very similar exposure range to the car, and I don't really want that, so I'm gonna shove the gamma down, try to accentuate some of that smoke too. Again, it's making it look like I'm flaring, but I'm not. Actually, I'm gonna shove the lift down as well. I want above the haulers to be pretty dark as well. Yeah, I think I like that actually. I don't know, I could take it either way. It looks a little more like total flaring with it off, but with it on, I like the focus pull onto the car. So I could take or leave it. Again, it's a static shot. You can see the smoke. I don't know. What do you think? What do you guys think? So this is with the second power window off. Kind of like that. This is with it on. I don't know. You can kind of see the smoke better without the second power window. All right. We're going to get back to comments here. I'm good, buddy. You couldn't just use, you should, no, you can't just use shutter priority. The question is, can you use, to get consistent exposure, can you use shutter priority with 1+ and set your exposure on the multimeter? The problem with that is, specifically for me, I'm using a very small, and this will come out in my camera settings video, but I'm using the medium size multimeter focus box, and the problem with 0.17, or a problem with setting like an auto exposure, is that it's multimetering what's inside that box, right? Thinking that it's your subject. So it's trying to expose the subject and not necessarily the image. So if I just using this shot as an example, this is probably on the multimeter when I shot it. Like when I shot this on the multimeter, this was probably actually closer to either 0.7 or 1 stop overexposed, not quite the 1.7. And so to my point earlier about being intentional with your shooting, I don't think you could ever just like auto anything, because it changes, right? Like in this case, I know I want the exposure a little bit down, or if I'm shooting at night, or if I'm shooting in the rain specifically, I want it to be a little bit darker. And you could go in, change, and have it exposed down and all that stuff. But I'm not just trying to expose. In this case, I'm manual focus, but assume I was using the actual multimeter for autofocus, and my box was right here in the image. I don't want it to just expose for this car, because if it exposed for that car, I could lose parts of the track. I could lose parts of the flare that I'm getting here. There's a lot that I could lose. So I'm focused less on the multimeter. I use that like in an absolute pinch, but I'm very often looking at the graph, making sure I'm not clipping anything at the top. and making sure the bulk of my information, which is the only real way to test like where your exposure lies, is looking at my graph, my little RGB parade, my luminance parade, we'll say, and making sure for me, Sony, I have to be in between 40 and 60 IRE. Every shot, the bulk of the data I try to place in between 40 and 60 IRE. I know that if I'm in that range, the color grading will be very easy. I hope that makes sense. I have a settings video coming where hopefully I explain more of this, but how do you deal with changing settings fast without missing shots while still making sure you're exposing correctly? Well, for the most part, aperture, shutter, and white balance are always staying the same, and I'm just turning the ND. So it's easy. So like basically, if I was setting up this shot, I would be looking at my luminance parade, have my hands on the ND filter, and just turn the ND. Turn the ND until I'm looking at my parade and the bulk of my information is in the range that I want it, and I'm not clipping anything at the top. I don't mind clipping the bottom. I don't mind clipping shadows. I would rather be on that range than over clipping highlights, because I don't mind losing. I end up crushing them anyway. I just don't want to, I can't bring back what isn't there on the highlight side. So I think if you're absolutely in a pinch, you could do shutter priority stuff, but I would never recommend. I would look at your image and try to set each one individually. That info about the graph was gold. Yeah, appreciate you. That's the biggest helper for me in making, because you got to think like the process has to be fast. Like when DHL, when Honda wins, right? Because that's who I was working for. I was working for Coforce, and Honda's their big client. They need this like immediately, right? And I had like a whole batch of clips. I'll just show you. So like we come in, we have this whole batch of like victory celebration stuff that I have to pump to the editor super fast. And so like I can't be like editing each one of these clips like completely individually. I need them to be relatively close to the same. So like that graph is massively helpful. If my data is in the same range, I can almost always copy and paste this grade across all these and be pretty close. Struggling to get colors right in overcast conditions, trying to get the right style. Okay, I'll do a cloudy one next. I'll do a cloudy one and then that'll be it. Are you using false colors to expose? I use false colors really only with interviews. I know that skin tones need to live in that 60 to 80 IRE range. And so occasionally if I'm feeling a little bit not confident, if I'm feeling not confident with my exposure, like if the sun is a bit hot on one side or something, I'll turn on false colors just so I can make sure that the skin tones aren't being pushed too far up the exposure scale. But for the most part, I am going by eye and by the regular graph. I'm not using false colors very often. The ND tip, yeah, man. Wow, to be fair, I do this every week, right? So like you learn along the way ways to make yourself more efficient, because that's a big part of the. Alistair, do they ever let you color your stuff? Yes, in this case I did. I don't always. This is weird because I'm not usually doing agency work. This was a little different because I was working for an agency, so I basically just pumped an editor footage all weekend. And so in that case, they did have me color my stuff because they're generally shooting an S Cinetone. So I did color my stuff before I sent it. I'm going to show you some shots. I was like, I don't want to like, I'll say this. I was really happy with the stuff I was getting on Sunday during race day and on Saturday. It's like some of the best shooting sessions I've had, where I feel like every single shot I was getting was like really happy with. Like I was trying to be creative. So like as an example, I don't want to pull the wrong one here. Like as an example, this shot, right? This is maybe a bad one because the helicopter. So the TV helicopter is flying right overhead a lot. I'm gonna try to find one with it so you can kind of see it. You can't really see it. It's just like fun for me, I guess. But the TV helicopter is right here over the palm trees. I'm flaring, behind these palm trees. It's very Florida. But then I was doing like wide pans down. So here's what it looks like. So like really abrupt, high motion, unexpected like types of shots. I'm gonna go to the beginning and play through a few of these. So here's just a basic pan in the same area. It's cool. Like, there's nothing not cool about that. It's a wide pan. It's in focus. You got palm trees in the back. It's a fine shot. But this is way more interesting to me. So I experimented with different ways of catching the cars. Sometimes I tried to do it later so that the movement was more abrupt. Sometimes I was doing it earlier to give the editor options. Like that one is more like he's a little bit more through the corner, so the motion straight down from the trees faster. With some sound effects, that would absolutely slap. What else? The shot you've already seen of the guy with the glasses. Yeah, I just felt really good. I'm gonna show my start shot. This is a Fred. I don't know. I'm sure Fred's gone by now, but I asked Fred where he, about different start shots, right? Because I was given some freedom on where I shot the start because they had somebody in turn 1, and so Fred told me about this spot, and this is he didn't know at the time, but these are the types of shots I love, like absolutely chaotic. I love when you have layers of cars going different ways. You can do this at VIR and at Road Atlanta as well, where you've got layers of cars going in different directions. So this was my start shot. All thanks to Fred. I love shots like that. Absolutely love like layered shots like that. I don't feel like you get them often. And it was me and like 2 other guys shooting in this spot, but this is apparently not a popular spot to shoot the start. And probably for photo it's not that great, but for video, you have 3 layers of cars. Guys coming out of 2 to the left, setting back up to the right, and then cutting across the frame in the foreground. It's just, yeah, I love stuff like that. I absolutely love it. I did slow-mo stuff as well of the entire field so that we had every client in there, but I love stuff like that. What is the definition of a client wants the video super fast? Well, it changes at different levels, but in this case, like in F1, for example, F1 wanted stuff immediately, and they would rather me send clips through WhatsApp and get a lower quality version of the clip so that they could have it faster than wait for me to upload it to Dropbox and then download it from Dropbox. That is how important the speed is for them. NASCAR is very similar. The content demand is very high. IndyCar is still a little bit below that, right? As long as I had those clips to them a half hour after podium, I was still in the range. But you have to understand, just as a point of reference, this has sort of gotten away from color grading, but just to give you an idea. So you've got these, you've got shots. Where is it? Where's him celebrating? Okay, so you've got this shot of him celebrating. Look at all these photographers. And this is only a fourth of the podium, and there's probably 15 in this photo. So there's probably 50 to 100 photographers. All of them are racing to get this information to their outlets as fast as possible. So it's not just that they want it fast. Like Honda wants to be one of the first to post that they won this race, right? So that is the purpose of the speed. And the same with F1 or NASCAR. IMSA is a little bit more relaxed. The content demand is not quite as high just because of the way the fan bases are. You have a lot of fans in Europe. But nonetheless, just to give you an idea of why it's so important to have it fast. Would I communicate and brief an editor for fast turnaround deliveries? I wouldn't say I'm the director. No, I didn't. In this case, I was just a shooter, basically. With my own stuff, obviously, I have a lot more control when I'm operating as like an actual contractor for brands that I'm doing the edits on. But in this case, this is the only time I'm ever, so far, besides F1, that I'm ever just a shooter. So like I'm just trying to give options to the editor and the producers. So I'm not. I will give some information, but not a lot. I mean, I'm not shooting enough that they can't just scrub through it quick and figure it out. So I'm not doing a lot of notes. I'm just trying to get everything to them as fast as possible. Ever jump my shutter on those? I tend to go 220 degrees. Gives it a really, like a lot of action movies do change. Well, like in high action sequences, we'll jump the shutter because it makes everything look like stuttery and kind of nuts. So that's pretty common. I don't really use that stuff a lot. Maybe I should. Maybe like in celebrations or something. The problem is I don't ever know if I knew I was shooting footage just from my edit, I would maybe get more adventurous on stuff like that. But when I'm shooting, a lot of times like brands will take this footage for like internal deliverables with shareholders and things they can play at like dealerships and stuff like that throughout the country, like when I'm doing stuff for Aston Martin. So in that case, it would look kind of weird because it wouldn't have the context that I was trying to make in an edit. So I tend to have to try to stay pretty true to normal on a lot of that stuff because it's not just footage being used for my edit. It's footage that they'll use internally forever. On WhatsApp is crazy. Dude, it's the craziest thing. Like they're still, even now, they're still posting videos. F1 Vegas is still posting videos that I shot from F1 that are from the WhatsApp chat. And it's just because it's easier and quicker for them to get to it than to download it off Dropbox. It's insane. But their priority is the content, not the quality. You know, as a creator, I'm very focused on quality, but that's just the way it is. I will say, while we're on the subject, I'm not bragging. I was given the opportunity to do Vegas F1, and if you watch episode 8 of Drive to Survive, all of the footage, not all, most of the footage from the Lewis Hamilton laps with Beyonce and Jay-Z and A$AP Rocky in the car is my footage. F1 was not allowing many people to be on the circuit for that because we staged on circuit for that. So Ferrari was allowed one photographer, one videographer, and then F1 was allowed one photographer, one videographer, and I was the videographer for F1. So they must have licensed that footage to Box, and it is all the in-car stuff is mine. My little DJI camera, same one I use to make my vlogs on my channel. We're filming Beyonce and Jay-Z do ride-alongs with Lewis Hamilton, and it made it into Drive to Survive. So I haven't made it. I haven't made it to that episode yet. We just started watching yesterday, but kind of cool. Kind of a cool little keepsake, I guess you could say, for that whole experience. Would you say that in IMSA or IndyCar that the deadline is more lenient because it sounds crazy to create high-quality video within the same day? IMSA is definitely more lenient than IndyCar. There's just, anytime there's more fans, there's a higher demand for that content, and IMSA is just not quite as big maybe as IndyCar, and there seems to be understanding that they'd rather have a quality piece. It just depends. Like IndyCar wants a good mix of like good quality but like also very fast, whereas like IMSA, I would say they a lot of times would prefer good quality over fast. It just depends. But if a team wins a race, they want it fast. Doesn't have to be a fancy edit, doesn't have to be fancy music. Throw some clips together and get it on the internet because the hype is right now. You know what I mean? So it's just different. Every series is a little bit different, but IndyCar definitely is more demanding for content than IMSA. But maybe that's why I like IMSA. I got more time to make cool stuff. How'd you start with shooting motorsport? I just decided to, basically. I had a corporate job. There's videos on my channel about how to get my job, and I talk a lot more in depth about it, but I just basically wanted to and went for it. That's the short version. Watch those other videos that can explain a bit more detail and show you some of my early work. So I think that's important to the context. How do these brands reach out to yourself? Email. I'm a little established now, so a lot of them like know me personally or know somebody that knows me personally. But for me early on, the biggest single driver for success in my career was the 2 years I spent absolutely grinding Instagram. I have said it in several videos and will continue to say it forever, but Instagram are using the social media platforms that you intend to sell products on for these clients is absolutely paramount to getting to the next level in this industry. I was making content for myself, personal stuff. You can go back on my Instagram page over the last sort of, not so much last year, but the 2 years before that, I was grinding every week, like forcing myself to make something, try to get creative, try to make new style stuff, try to learn how the algorithm worked. Because at the end of the day, these people are hiring you to be a part of that world, right? And if you have a level of disdain for social media, why would anybody hire you to create social media content? Like it just like if you absolutely hated live music, why would I hire you to work a concert venue? You know what I mean? So it's just, I think that passion for learning this stuff and racing forced it into my content. I did 2 years of reps. You have to understand too, it's reps. Like if I decide to make one every week, that's 104 pieces of content in 2 years. And I learned a lot in those 104 because I could take chances. I could try stuff because it wasn't client based, right? So I could try stuff for myself and see how it worked. And so I was able to take more risks and I learned a lot more because of that. And so I'm a big proponent of using social media for its intended purpose. I mean, it's business. I wasn't making businessy stuff. I'm not a massive fan of people that just simply post their work. I don't think there's a space for that. If you're wanting to treat your Instagram as a portfolio, that's one thing. But if you want to grow and if you want people to be reaching out to you, you have to be staying relevant and on current trends and styles and that kind of thing. And it makes you learn. Like Paddy Cartwright comes out with his like slow motion sound effect stuff. And I think like I would like to learn that stuff. And so I make edits. I made an edit trying to learn that stuff, trying to emulate a little bit of that style. And I learned a lot about sound effects in that process. And then the very next race, Ferrari hires me to make one of those reels for them at Indy because they saw my piece on Instagram. And so that dedication to like always trying to be better and be out front on social media has paid dividends for me. Caleb, IMSA grader. I agree. Love IMSA. I like WEC. But I love IMSA. If I could only shoot one series, it'd be IMSA for sure. Facts. Instagram is a business card. Facts. All right, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do, somebody mentioned cloudy. So I'm going to find my cloudy clip. I think it's this one. So this is a cloudy clip. You don't have a lot of sky, so you can't tell. But just know that it's extremely cloudy and foggy at this time. So I'm going to do my same thing. I'm going to copy my grade from my original clip. And every time it's cloudy, it's very orange in my image. I'm using I'm still probably here using daytime white balance, which makes it a little less orange, but it's still like a real problem. So this one we'll get to flex a little bit more about our adjustments, turning it into a proper image. Because I would probably use this clip with these other ones in an edit, and I can't have it looking this crazy. So first thing I'm going to address, because it's so far off, is the temperature. So first things first, we have to cool it down. I lose the ability a little bit to make my image like look bright and warm because the colors are so dull, but we'll address that in a minute. So first, I'm looking at my whites here on the wall. I cool it way down. That's way too far. This is way too far warm. I'm just trying to find a nice balance. I'm looking at the wall and I'm looking at the racetrack. I think that's okay. I need to de-green it a little bit, push it back towards magenta. Trying to basically fully neutral my white balance. I'm not trying to make it look warm anymore at this point. So basically I'm 0 on the tent, minus 100 on the temp. I think this is pretty balanced. I'm going to go to my exposure quick because I'm shooting through a fence. Again, I'm going to go to 1.2. And then something I have to do every time it's cloudy, I'll go back to my LUT tab and I'll change it from 0.4, 0.5, which is where I usually live. And I'll go up to something like 0.6 or 7. So there's a little bit, this is 0.7. I bring some of the color and saturation and depth back in the car. It did warm it up just a little bit, so I'm going to go back to my temperature, cool it down just a tick. It's just barely anymore. The track here, you'll have to understand this street is pink. Like, I don't care what people say. It's not new asphalt. And it looks very pink. So don't think that the asphalt is like a testimony to the balance of the white balance. That's just the way the freaking place looks in some of the places on the circuit. All right, now I'm going to, it's made everything flat. You lose a lot of contrast in the car when it's cloudy. So I'm going to add some back in my gain and my lift. So I'm going to run the gain up just a little bit. I'm looking at the car here specifically. I don't want to make it too hot, but I want it to be up just a little bit. I'm not focused on the wall because I'll probably adjust that a little in power windows. Actually, I'm gonna reset this power window. So we're looking at the full deal. And then I'm gonna run the lift down just a little bit. Again, we're just trying to add some of that contrast back. And then last thing I would do when it's cloudy, I want to do a little bit of selective saturation. Actually, I'm going to go back in exposure. I'm going to lower the highlights a little bit. Just looking at the car here. And so this is where I'm at. I'm just going to turn this off. So this is before our exposure and temp changes. This is width. I'm going to go into the color. There's a lot of colors in this image. There's green behind us. There's a lot of green. There's some blues like in the shadows of the post. I want to make the car pop. I want that to be my focus. And so a lot of times what I'll do, especially when it's cloudy, I'll go into my hue and saturation. I'll grab the yellow, and I'll grab the red in the car. And I'm going to boost those up just a little bit. Just those two colors. I don't want to boost saturation in the entire image. You can see I'm starting to grab the track too. So I'm going to fix that and go down on that. I don't want to saturate the track, but I do want to saturate the reds. Widen this guy out. And I want to saturate the yellows. And that adds that pop of color that you would get if it was sunny. And so the image, it's definitely very cloudy. It's a tight shot, so you can't tell as much, but like you can always tell, a real person would be able to tell that these trees being like this shadowy, it's definitely cloudy. And so it is what it is, like you can't fix it too much, but this adds some of that balance back. So this is no color. This is straight out of camera with the color adjustments. This is it with our adjustments. So it adds a little bit of that pop that you would get on the color if it was actually shot during the daytime. So that's how I handle cloudy. Add a little bit of saturation with my LUT, and then basically selectively saturate just my subject. Last thing I'm going to do is, this is one along the marina. I'm just going to show something I have to do all the time at tracks. I'm going to copy my Pillow node again. I'm going to reset the power window. If I was doing a quick adjustment on this image, I would go into my exposure. I'd probably run the gamma up just a little bit. It's a little too shadowy, contrasty. Temp tab, again, it's a little green. Shove it a little pink. We're going to warm it up just a little bit. And so really what I want to show in this one, I need to take a drink, man. Hold on one second. Holy smokes, this is a lot of talking. Okay, so what I'm trying to show you here is Sony is horrible at greens. So like you have this patch of grass over here, and the greens just always look so bad. And so in the same process that we were doing in the sky earlier, I'm going to go into my HSL. I'm going to go into my hue versus hue. I'm going to grab the greens. It's going to show me here, again, very close to yellow, so you have to pay attention like to the yellow in your image. And I'm going to warm those greens. Again, same as the blues earlier. I just want to warm my stuff up a little bit. I want to make it look like it's in southern Florida. I'm going to shove those up just a little bit. Then I'm going to come over to the luminance, grab the greens again. I'm going to take them down. It's just always, this is just almost always probably just my camera or whatever. Go into saturation now and do the same thing with saturation. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. And so if I go zoom out, I'm just going to show you the before and after of the adjustments we just did. This is the before. This is the after. Just this green, Sony just makes grass look unnatural. And so this is something I always have to do with grass, especially when I'm trying to get this like warm look out of the image. So that's something I have to do. If I was really like grading this, I would probably take another power window, gradient at the bottom. I'm a little bright at the bottom. I want this sort of center section to be the focal point of my image. And so I would lower gamma down so that it looks a little shadowy in the foreground. And the focus then on my image is more this section of the racetrack. So that's how I would do something like this. Like if we're like when we're at Sebring or Daytona or Indianapolis is a big one where we have tracks with a lot of grass. I always have to fix the grass. Grass sucks. And thankfully I don't shoot any cars that are yellow because the green tones are very close to yellow and it can get a little wonky sometimes, but yeah, that's where I'm at. So ultimately that's my color grading process on some clips that are a little bit different than just a super well lit clip. I very much like doing these lives on a per capita basis versus the actual videos that get posted in my feed. It's significantly less time to sit here and just chat with you guys. And I feel like I get a lot out of it because we're able to have conversations. I get to see actual questions that you have instead of just like making videos guessing, all that stuff. So really appreciate you guys. I do want to say off the extras says, when are you going to do a live critiquing other people's work as feedback? I would love that. I have done those in the past. Those are very popular to do. I am toying with the idea. I get messages all the time. And I don't mean to be like that guy that's like saying he gets messages all the time. But a lot of the ones I get are people sending me their work and asking for feedback. And almost always it's art, right? It's like super subjective. It's not easy to critique people's art, especially in DMs. Like, you know, I have a job to do. I have stuff to do. It's hard to dedicate that time to actually giving it the critique it needs. And it's art. So it's hard to critique with. So I end up basically just a lot of times just saying like, oh, nice work, dude. Looks really good. I love it. I like it. I like this or that. I don't actually do a lot of like critiquing. I just like point out a few things that I like. And so something I think I'm going to do, because making those videos was extremely time consuming. I think what I'm going to do, and I'm still trying to figure all this out, I am playing with the idea of opening up the members tab on my YouTube page where there would be a small monthly fee. Let's just say $10. There would be a $10 monthly fee. One of the things that would be included in the members tab, there'd be a video on the members tab that would explain how you can send me your content and I will give you an actual critique and things that I would change. I just like pumping you full of compliments, which is kind of what I do now, is not the most helpful to your development as a new filmmaker. And so I think I'm going to use that as a way where it's now maybe a little bit worth my time a little bit more because you're a member of the channel and I can give you actual feedback, like criticism, because you're only going to get better by listening to criticism, not listening to me saying the stuff I like, but instead me saying the stuff that maybe I would change. So I need to figure out what else I can add to that system to make it a little more enticing. I think ultimately what will come is sort of tutorial work on the business side of the industry. So creating videos on the money side of the industry, the business side of the industry, and letting all of that stuff live in the members tab, because those are not necessarily algorithm bangers like camera settings and color grading and stuff like that that lives on the free tab. So there's no paywall in that way. And those are things that I'm toying with right now because I get people's videos all the time. I would like to find a good way that I can actually help people with my opinions, but in a way that has to make sense for me as well. Like it can't be, I would sit here all day and critique people's work, and that's a tough ask for anybody. So finding a way that like I can add value, but also get value, if that makes sense. So that is what I'm toying with right now. Would love to know what people think about that. Ultimately, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I can do on the live streams again, but I would love to keep these live streams topic. This is my first one where I feel like I'm like really topicing something. In this case, it was color grading. I've done some live editing ones. I would love to keep these centered around a certain topic in the future. So that's stuff I'm toying with, I'm playing with, trying to figure out how to best use that stuff. So from an announcement standpoint, my Daytona 500 vlog is the one I plan to post this weekend. And then I'm in New York City for a week on more of a vacation with my wife. And so there will be a 5 trackside tips video that following week. So Daytona 500 vlog this week, and then a trackside tips video next week. I'm going to change this real quick so I can say bye. So that's my schedule coming up on YouTube. I probably won't do another live until the week of Sebring, which is in 3 weeks. For those of you that don't know, the Qatar race for WEC has been delayed, and so that will affect things a little bit. But we have Sebring in a couple weeks. I'm excited for that. I have a lot of stuff I want to do for that, so you'll hear from me again on the live before that. But I appreciate everyone for hanging out. It's an hour and a half or so, which is about my sweet spot until my voice gives out. So hopefully this stuff was helpful. If you're watching this video after the fact, please let me know if you have any questions, since you weren't able to make the live, and I will try to answer those. But nonetheless, I had a lot of fun. I always do with these. I'm going to continue to do more because I like it. So I'm having fun over on YouTube. I appreciate everybody's support. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Thank you very much for everything. The YouTube has absolutely been like going off recently, and I'm very thankful. It's nice to have something to show for the hard work that we've been putting in. So everybody that supports it and comments it, and specifically that likes it, I forgot to say that before I jump off, please like the video. It's going to take you 5 seconds, and it is the biggest driving factor to growth on this channel. The stuff that does well on likes is the stuff that goes more into people's inboxes and on their feeds. So that is the biggest way that you can help me continue to produce videos, is to like the video, and that tells me that you want to see more, and it also gets more people in here, more people hanging out with us when we do these. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to go about the rest of my day. Look for the Daytona 500 vlog on Friday morning, and if you have any questions, just ask, but I will see you in the next one.
Yeah, I bet on myself.